This meeting is being recorded.
All right. Well, um, sort of wrapping up the section on disciplining children, but obviously it'll come up a lot. But the last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to disciplining children is just the difference between discipline and punishment. Job of it's not that's not our primary duty. The here's how I think about it. Discipline is about getting the way that the world works into the habits of our children, right? Into the loves, into the way that our children think about the world, right? We're working on um, helping them live well in the world that God made, which is wisdom, right? Wisdom is living well in the world God made, and we're trying to help our children understand the way the world that God made works so that they can live well in it. Punishment is about righting scales, right? Scales getting out of balance, and punishment rights those scales. And that's just not the job of parents. Um, the because breaking a house rule is different than crime, and crime is the realm of state, right? It's the jurisdiction of the state, and it's easy for parents to slip into kind of justice mode thinking with discipline, and that changes the tenor into something that's not helpful. Now you can there's a justice mind, there's a sort of allegorical justice that you are trying to teach, in the sense that you don't want unjust discipline, but reason is because it takes away the the wisdom that you're trying to give to your kids. It's important to teach your kids justice. One of the stories that my kids love to tell is when they were all kind of they were all in their tweens, young teenagers, and they got into an argument about something, and my wife made them set up a jury, um, a jury of their peers for two of the siblings to argue to, and because she's teaching them how justice works, teaching them about the jury system, teaching so she set up this little jury, or this little courtroom in our library, and each of them had to give opening arguments, answer each other's arguments, right? They were like 9, 11, 20, 12, right around that, and this argument that they were having turned into this really fun moment, and it taught them about justice, right? That's something that we want to do. Taught them about the court system, and we want to be doing those sorts of things to teach them about justice, but discipline is not where we teach them about justice. Discipline is how we claim our children as our own and help them become wise, by understanding the world God made so that they can live well in it. Um, Here's some verses about this are Proverbs 3, 11 and 12. My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. For whom the Lord loves, he corrects, even as a father the son in whom he delights. Right? When he's talking about justice, you don't get this is who the Lord loves. Right? You get the Lord hates injustice. The Lord hates unnatural scale, or imbalanced scales, right? He hates when the rich get something in the courts that the poor don't get, right? God hates those sorts of things. When he talks about discipline, it talks about this act of love, that where the Lord loves his children and chastens them in order to help them live well in the world, right? So Proverbs is all about being a good king by accepting the chastening of the Lord to live well in the world. Um, the uh, but discipline is an act of love. Hebrews 12:6 also says, "For whom the Lord loves, he chastens and scourges every son whom he receives." Right. So a a spanking from the Lord to us is an act of love, and we should accept it that way. And then we want to shape our discipline that sort of way. Um, Proverbs 13, he that spares the rod hates his son, but he that loves him chastens him uh, in appropriate at the appropriate times. Betimes, right? This is an old word, but it just means that the appropriate times, right? So there's a there should be corrective discipline, but the corrective discipline, if it's only corrective discipline and it's not teaching and training discipline, if it's not you know teaching your sons how to use the lawnmower, healthy sports is a really good place where there's a lot of good discipline learned, where young people are getting hold and learning how to control their bodies, their emotions, control their adrenaline. Right, your sports is good for that. Competition, music competitions. For me, music competitions when I was young, it taught me a lot about how to control adrenaline. Right, you get really worked up, you get nervous, all that sort of thing, and so there was a lot of good discipline added to my life. I played the marimba and played percussion and different things, and I would go to the competitions and have to compete and be judged. And that's a really important part of discipline. It's like just if we just live with corrective discipline, then we start thinking that all discipline is scale balancing justice, and we lose all of the positive aspects of discipline. And corrective discipline is one of the it's really actually a pretty small part overall in the discipline that parents bring, because corrective discipline, you think of how often the scriptures talk about the patience of the Lord with us, right? His corrective discipline is not the primary way that we interact with him. It shouldn't be the primary way that our kids interact with us. Um, so, um, Proverbs 19, chasten thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his crying. Right. So, um, the there's the corrective discipline is a part of the teaching or a part of the training, I guess. Um, but it's discipline aiming them towards wisdom. Um, the Psalm 119, just sort of buried right in the middle. Um, the author says, "Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I have kept thy word." Right. So the affliction, and Proverbs 119 is all about loving the way uh, the way the word teaches us who God is, how the world works, loving all of that. And that affliction is a re-aiming back towards wisdom. Uh, and so you want your kids, Psalm 119:71, to be responding to your discipline that way. It is good for me that I have been afflicted, that I learned thy statutes, right? It's a training, it's a teaching tool. Now, it's important. We're all we're all always behind, right? We don't do this perfectly. We are, as parents, we're learning wisdom, and our kid, and then trying to teach wisdom while we learn it, right? If you've ever been a teacher, you know how hard it is to just be a couple pages ahead in a book, when you're trying to teach a book to a classroom or to your kids, or you're trying to teach this book and you're only a couple uh, pages ahead, right? The first time I was a Latin teacher, I'm just a couple of lessons ahead these kids, um, and there's it can be really hard in that situation. You're like, well, because they've got questions and you don't really know the answers. Well, parenting is like that in a lot of ways. We're all people that have shipwrecked our lives trying to teach to sailors of the next generation. Um, and remembering that is a good way to a good thing that will temper our discipline into the right humble mode, where You say, well, me spanking you is teaching me wisdom just as much as it's teaching you. That's part of what we're doing. We're learning wisdom together, and so here we are learning wisdom together with discipline. And I'm trying to receive the discipline of the Lord in the same sort of way. And it's good that your kids hear the examples of you receiving discipline from the Lord and trying to accept it or struggling to accept it, because they're going to be in that same situation, right? Because they're fighting against their sinful inclinations just like you are. But if you're not thinking in terms of punishment, but in terms of discipline, it'll help you to explain it to your kids and always be having those kind of open, honest conversations. And kids that are well disciplined will love justice as they get older, and it's really important. God wants us to love justice, and uh, kids that are well disciplined turn into kids that love justice. Kids that are not well disciplined grow up and they don't love justice, and that's not a good spot to be in our relationship with the Lord. So thinking in terms of discipline instead of justice is really important as we've gone through all of the teach, train, enforce, or teach, train, correct, and forgive process.